I was the one who filed the entry. Designation: Nebula Keth 4419. Dead drift sector. No strategic value. The patrol had swept through on a routine cataloging mission, the kind the Keth Archival Authority runs 11,000 times per cycle across the outer boundary. We catalog. That is what the Keth are. Every debris field, every radiation signature, every stray piece of metal older than 10,000 years gets a file, a threat classification, and a storage node in the Great Index. The Great Index holds 9.2 billion entries. It is complete. It has never once failed to categorize a thing. So when our long-range scanners picked up 214 small autonomous units moving through the debris of Nebula 4419, I did exactly what every archivist before me would have done. I opened a new file. The units were tiny, each no larger than a Keth maintenance skiff, perhaps 12 meters across, 8 tons of mass. They moved slowly, methodically, crawling over objects in the debris field the way organisms feed on a carcass. Our spectral analysis identified their composition: iron alloy chassis, low-grade fusion cells, articulated manipulator arms with cutting and welding capability, standard robotic maintenance drones of a design we had cataloged before. I typed the classification without hesitation: automated maintenance artifacts, residual program cycling, threat assessment, none, origin, human, probable, PRU expansion era, recommended action, log and pass. Fleet Archivist Reth, my superior, glanced at my console and nodded the way one nods at weather. Human residuals, she said. Pre-expansion. Probably forgot they were still running. She waved one hand at the display. File it. I filed it. We should have looked at what they were working on. The debris field in Nebula 4419 was dense. Several hundred metallic objects scattered across 40 cubic light-minutes of dead space. Our initial sweep categorized them as decommissioned hull fragments, wreckage, scrap. The Great Index holds over 100 million entries for human scrap alone, because humans discard material the way other species breathe. They build, they use, they abandon. We catalog what they leave behind. I logged 41 of the larger metallic objects as decommissioned hull fragments. No power signature, no weapons signature, no life signs. Class, debris. Every word of that classification was accurate at the time I wrote it. No power, no weapons, no life, debris. But the drones were not maintaining debris. They were rebuilding it. The anomaly surfaced 17 days later, and it surfaced only because a junior scanner operator named Dolth, a young cataloger on her first deep space rotation, noticed that the mass readings on the 41 hull fragments had changed. Not by much. Less than 0.5% on any individual object. But Dolth was meticulous, the way all good Keth archivists are meticulous, and she flagged it. I reviewed her flag with mild interest, and no alarm. Mass increase on inert debris? Micrometeorite accumulation. Dust adhesion. Solar wind mineral deposition. I could list a dozen natural explanations, and every one of them was more probable than what was actually happening. Dolth was not satisfied. She rescanned. The hull fragments had internal thermal gradients, faint, nearly invisible against the nebula's ambient radiation, but present, warmth inside objects that should have been dead cold for centuries. She ran a focused spectral sweep on the largest fragment and found trace emissions consistent with low-level fusion priming. Something inside those hulls was warming up. I remember the exact moment Fleet Archivist Reth leaned over Dolth's station and read the thermal map. The color drained from her face, not suddenly, but in stages, the way the Keth complexion blanches when the autonomic shock response activates. Cheeks first, then crest, then hands. Reclassify, she said quietly. Reclassify everything in this nebula, right now. I opened the file. My own entry stared back at me. Decommissioned hull fragments. And for the first time in 11 years as a cataloger, I did not know what to type instead. The focused scans told us what the 214 drones had been doing for 17 days. They had been replacing hull plating, panel by panel, weld by weld, cutting away corroded sections, and fitting new alloy sourced from the smaller debris in the field. They had been reconnecting internal power conduits, cleaning reactor cores, flushing coolant systems that had sat dry for what our carbon dating estimated at 800 years. They had been fabricating replacement components from raw material they had mined quietly from asteroids at the nebula's edge. 214 drones, 12 meters each, working without instruction, without complaint, without pause, for 800 years. And the hulls were not debris, they were warships. I know what a warship looks like in the Great Index. We have 1.2 million entries for warships across every species, every era, every design philosophy, from the crude kinetic rams of the Vigil to the elegant phase lances of the Orith Dominion. I have personally catalogued over 11,000 of them. None of that prepared me for what was emerging from the scaffolding of tiny drones in Nebula 4419. The first hull to fully power up was the largest. Our scanners measured it at 4.7 kilometers, bow to stern, a figure I re-verified 3 times, because the Great Index contained no human warship longer than 1.9 kilometers, and that had been a colony transport, not a weapons platform. This was a weapons platform. The drone swarms had uncovered and restored weapons arrays running the full length of both flanks, railgun batteries, each barrel longer than our entire patrol cruiser. The engine block alone was wider than the Keth flagship. When its main engines fired, the thermal bloom whited out every sensor on our ship for 11 seconds. 11 seconds of blindness. When the picture returned, the warship was drifting forward out of its cradle of drones, and the drones that had built it, that had spent 800 patient years cleaning and welding and fabricating, simply turned away from the finished hull and moved to the next one. They were not done. There were still more to build. Dolph found the designation, etched into the restored bow plating, freshly cleaned and filled with luminous compound by the drones themselves, were 2 words in human script. Our translation matrix rendered them as the Gray Vigil. And beneath, in smaller characters, Battle Group 7, 40 vessels, mothballed, / awaiting recall. Awaiting recall. For 800 years, those drones had waited. Patient, residual, harmless. Running their program in a dead nebula that no patrol had reason to visit, restoring a fleet that no living species remembered, following a set of instructions that had never been rescinded. Then someone, somewhere, sent the recall. And the helpers did what helpers do. They got to work. The second warship powered up 19 minutes after the first, the third, 7 minutes after that. By the time Reth ordered our patrol group to withdraw, 4 cruisers, 11 escorts, 62,000 crew, 14 human warships were operational and forming a line that the Great Index would classify as battle formation, echelon left, aggressive posture. Behind the 14, the drones kept working. 27 more hulls in various stages of restoration, some nearly complete, engines primed, weapons loaded, hull plating sealed, some still skeletal, ribs of ancient superstructure exposed like the bones of something not yet born. The drones moved between them without urgency. They had been patient for 8 centuries. They could afford another week. We ran. I want the record to reflect that Fleet Archivist Reth did not order retreat out of cowardice. She made a classification, the only one that fit. 4 Keth cruisers against 14 human warships of a class that did not exist in the Great Index, with 27 more powering up behind them, was not a battle. It was a filing error about to become a catastrophe. We cleared the nebula's edge at maximum thrust. I watched the rear scanners as we pulled away. The drones were still working, welding, cutting, cleaning, restoring, 12-meter units crawling over warships that dwarfed anything in the Index, methodical, unhurried. They did not watch us leave. They had no reason to. We were irrelevant to their task. Reth filed an emergency reclassification with Central Archive. I helped her draft it. We sat together at her console for an hour, and for the first time in her 30-year career, she could not find the correct category. Decommissioned hull fragments was wrong. Automated maintenance artifacts was wrong. Threat assessment. None was so catastrophically wrong that the Index would need a new error classification just to describe how wrong it was. In the end, she typed 6 words and transmitted them to the Central Archive with a priority flag that had not been used in 400 years. Reclassify all human debris, all of it. Because the Gray Vigil was 40 warships in one dead nebula, and the Great Index lists 11,000 dead nebulae. I have since searched the index for entries matching the profile. Small, autonomous, 12-meter, fusion-powered, manipulator-armed, classified as residual program cycling, human maintenance drones, filed under Harmless by archivists just like me, in nebulae just like Nebula 4419, with the same classification I used, the same threat level, the same recommended action. Log and pass. The index returned 3,407 matching entries. I do not know how many of them are maintaining debris. I do not know how many received the recall. I do not know how many have already finished building what they were sent to build 800 years ago. I filed my report. I wait. That is what the Keth do. We catalog, we classify, we wait. The drones do not wait. The drones build.